wasted. I used to watch him at the wheel, working the schooner to windward, an eye on the canvas aloft, steering with the easy, certain movements of a seaman born. He was in love with the schooner before we had been out a week, and he had reason. Frisco built for the last of the pelagic sealing. Varana's boat was the fastest thing of her tonnage in the South Seas. More than once in our talks Terii seemed to forget the plans he had confided to me. She needed a new foresail. The set of this one did not please him. He was going to have her copper renewed in places. She was getting dingy below. The cabin needed a touch of paint. At times, speaking of these things, he stopped short in the midst of a sentence and changed the talk to other subjects. The language came back to him surprisingly. He was able to understand and make himself understood before we raised the palms of Rimarutu. The mate took her through the pass. It was late afternoon, cool and cloudless, with a gentle sea nuzzling at the reef. The island was like the memory of a dream, fresh green palms, snowy beaches, catspaws ruffling the lagoon in long blue streaks, so beautiful that the sight of it made one's heart ache and the breath catch in one's throat. A dozen canoes put out to meet us from the first settlement. There were greetings from friends and relatives, embraces and tears. Terii lay silent, propped on his elbows and staring ahead. As we slipped across the lagoon, the island people spoke in tones so low that I could hear the crisp sound of the schooner's bows parting the landlocked water. The other village lay beyond the beach ahead of us. Varana's village, where Terii had been born, a place of dreams in the mystery of the evening light. It was not difficult to guess at the boy's thoughts. The moment was one of those which make up the memories of a lifetime. Every man has known them: rapture, pain, the enjoyment of supreme beauty, the flavor of exotic and unrepeatable experience. But not every man is permitted to taste such contrasts as this boy had known in 24 years of life. I was a little envious. I think of the rarity of that poignant homecoming. On the first evening, when we had greeted the people of the village, Terii was led away by his old aunt, Tupuna's sister. Just before bedtime I saw them at his mother's grave, a lonely shrine, roofed over in island fashion, where the light of a lamp shone on stunted bushes of frangipani. My eccentricities were not forgotten. They had spread my mat under the palms before Varana's house, and toward midnight Terii came quietly and lay down close by. I was wakeful in a reverie, living over the old days with my friend, wondering, with the usual idle and somber doubt, if we were destined to meet again. Low over the palm tops a planet glimmered like a shaded lamp. The Milky Way arched overhead through a sky powdered with fixed stars, remote suns, about which revolved myriads of worlds like ours. I rebelled at the thought that the strong soul of Varana should be snuffed out. Terii said nothing for a long time. I thought he had dropped off to sleep, but suddenly I heard his voice. "I have the strangest feeling tonight," he said thoughtfully. "If my father were here I could believe that I had never been away, that everything since I left England, school, my friends, the war, was no more than a dream. I can't explain it to you, but somehow this island seems the most real thing in the world. I've been talking with my aunt. I'd almost forgotten her name, you know, and I managed to understand a good bit of what she had to say. There is no doubt she believes it herself. My father comes to her every now and then, she says, for a talk on family matters. Last night he told her we would come today, and that I would stop here to take his old place among the people. It seems they are good enough to want me to stay. I almost wish I could." The drums were going at daybreak. The feast in Terii's honor was the greatest the island had known since heathen days. The entire population was on hand, the beach black with canoes, dozens of good-humored babies on mats under the trees with small brothers and sisters stationed to fan the flies away. The people sat in long rows in the shade, strings of shell about their necks, their heads wreathed in hibiscus and sweet fern. Tari was placed between the chief of the other village and Tehina, the chief's daughter, a full-blooded Rimarutu girl of 16, barefoot, dressed in a white frock with gold pendants in her ears and a thick, shining braid of hair. There is an uncommon charm about the women of that island, a stamp of refinement, a delicacy of frame and feature, remarked as long ago as the days of Spanish voyaging in the Pacific. Blood counts for something in Polynesia, and one needed only a glance at Tehina to know that the best blood of the island flowed through her veins. Her ancestor, if tradition may be credited, was in the long canoe with Panipi when the god pulled Rimarutu up from the bottom of the sea. I like those people, and in spite of the night's depression, I managed to enjoy the fun. I even danced a bit. Finally I saw that the dancers were taking their seats. Voices were lowered, heads were turned. Tehina was dancing alone to the rhythm of 100 clapping hands. In 20 years of the islands I have never seen a girl step more daintily. Little by little she moved towards Tari until she stood directly before him, inviting him to dance. Hands fluttering, swaying with an unconscious grace, smiling into his eyes. Every head turned. There were smiles, good-humored chuckles, nudges. They were proud of this girl and anxious that the son of Varana should dance with her. They had not long to wait. The next moment Tari had leapt to his feet and was dancing, with more enthusiasm than skill, to a long burst of cheers and clapping. When the canoes put off at nightfall, I noticed that Tehina did not leave. She had stopped to visit her uncle, the parson of the village church. I saw Tari with her often during the days that followed, fishing in the lagoon, swimming in the cove, lying on mats in the moonlight, where groups of young people were telling their interminable stories of the past. He seemed a little shy to me, and no longer exchanged confidences in the hour which precedes sleep. One evening, smoking and strolling along after dinner, I passed the parson's house and became aware of the vague figure of Tari walking to and fro impatiently beside the veranda. He stopped. I heard the rattle of a coral pebble on the roof. A moment later Tehina glided like a phantom around the corner of the house, and they went off arm in arm along the path to the sea. I thought to myself that the lad was not doing badly after his 12 years away from the island, but the blood was in him, of course. There was instinct in the tossing of the pebble and the unhesitating way he had led the girl toward the outer beach. The haunt of dreadful presences, a place no ordinary islander would visit after dark. I fancied him sitting there, the rumble of the surf in his ears, watching the lines of breakers rear up under the moon, with Tehina beside him, admiring and afraid. When his eye was not on her, she would glance right and left, along the beach and back toward the bush, half expecting to see some monstrous thing crouched and watching with fiery eyes. As for the boy, one could only guess at the troubled flow of his thoughts, stirred by cross-currents of ancestry and experience. In her own environment, Tehina was a girl to make any man look twice. For him, with his mother's blood and the memories of his childhood, she must have possessed a powerful appeal. The touch of her hand, her voice soft and low-pitched, murmuring the words of a half-forgotten tongue, her dark eyes shining in the moonlight, the scent of the strange blossoms in her hair. It was the test, the final conflict Varana had foreseen. I had my own opinion of the result, and yet the other life pulled hard. The days passed in pleasant island fashion. The loading of the schooner went on. There was no mention of a change in plans. The chief came to take his daughter home, and when she had gone, Tari spoke to me not too convincingly of his return to civilization. My trip to Rimarutu was a matter of pleasure alone. I was already planning to take this berth, and was not sorry when Tari announced one morning that we would sail north that afternoon. One seems perpetually saying good-bye down here. These islands